Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of boards, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. With this video, I'll be ranking the multiverse chapters of D&D 5e campaign book Vecna, Eve of Ruin. If you would like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/roguewatson. Patrons get exclusive access to private videos, custom 5e content, and participate in monthly DM roundtables and private patron D&D games. If you haven't already, please check out my Roll20 review for a full breakdown of this entire campaign. And like that video, this video will be full of spoilers as we're taking a deep dive into the Eve of Ruin campaign, specifically chapters 2 through 8, which, spoilers, the main campaign, once you learn in chapter 2, is to assemble the Rod of 7 parts so we can defeat Vecna before he unmakes reality and remakes it. And each rod is in a different location scattered across the D&D multiverse throughout all these settings, all of which we have seen in some fashion over the last 10 years of 5e's life cycle. So kind of a fun celebration of the anniversary of D&D, as well as almost, I think, sort of around the anniversary of 5th edition as well. So we're going to be ranking them from 1 through 7, starting with my least favorite all the way up to my favorite. I'm going to be ranking these chapters not just on how much I love these specific areas or regions, because that would be a much different ranking. Instead, I'll be ranking them on how they are used in this campaign book specifically. How well does that region or world's themes and concepts and characters get represented in this one single chapter? And how good is just the chapter itself? How fun is it? Is it a good dungeon crawl? Does it have fun characters? Are there interesting stories? And you might be asking yourself, well, wait a minute, why are we doing a ranking video for a campaign book with chapters in it? Isn't that what you do for anthologies? And the answer is yes, that is what I do for anthologies like Candlekeep Mysteries or Keys to the Golden Vault or Journey to the Radiant Citadel. I've done ranking videos for all of those. I really enjoy doing them. I suspect you all enjoy watching them. And it's because this campaign book is kind of like an anthology in a lot of ways. It's very similar to how those books are structured, which is kind of a complaint, given that this should be more of a storyline going on and might should have some more connectivity to each other. But I explain all of that in my Roll20 review, where I actually give my criticisms and praise for Eve of Ruin. But just suffice to say, I think, yes, they could be done a little bit better in terms of how they connect to each other. I'm not going to be counting that for or against when it comes to the rankings of this video. I'm just looking at each one as a separate slice of individualized, self-contained story and area, which they basically all are, and then ranking them against each other from, again, my least favorite to, I think, the ones that work the best. I will say, overall, at the very beginning, before we get started, out of the 7, 2 of them, I think, kind of suck, and I have a lot of problems with them and a lot of complaints. 2 of them, I think, are fine. I wish they were better, but they are fine. They're totally decent. And then 3 of them, I think, are really good. They're really amazing, and they're my favorite parts of this campaign, and I think could be used as worthy drop-ins to other adventures. They're that damn good. So overall, given those chapters, again, just looking at them in self-contained, I think it's a pretty good mix. But we're going to get into my praise and complaints for the various chapters. Again, only looking at chapters 2 through 8, which you can see here, which I found under Kaz's plan in Roll20, which is what I'll be using to showcase my ranking videos, include the following areas. The Forgotten Realms, which is represented by Underdark. Spelljammer, which is just a crashed spelljamming ship in the Astral Sea. Eberron, where we go to the Mournlands, which is kind of ground zero of this apocalyptic magical devastation. Ravenloft, of course, we're going Barovia. Dragonlance, some location, strongholds in the mountains. Greyhawk on the Isle of Serpents. And I guess technically Planescape with Avernus. I didn't think... That feels weird to me. Like, we had a whole Planescape campaign that specifically showcased all these, which I guess Avernus was technically like one of the doors connecting it to Planescape. But I don't know. That one's kind of a little bit eyebrow raising. It's like, wait a minute, Planescape? Really? Because Avernus was attached to the Forgotten Realms in the Avernus campaign. Whatever. Anyway, I would disregard the Planescape part and just say, okay, Avernus Nine Hells is represented in one chapter. All right, let's start off with my lowest ranking, weakest chapter of the bunch, which is chapter 5, the Ravenloft chapter. This one is disappointing for multiple reasons. I think the biggest one is that it's a return to the Death House, which is extremely bizarre. The Death House is the level 1. I guess this campaign also spoils a lot of stuff that was already released, but at this point, like, Curse of Strahd has been out for like 10 years, so hopefully not too spoilery. But the Death House was the level 1 kind of newbie starter adventure for Curse of Strahd, and it works fine there. But here, we're like level 14, I believe, and it feels really weird to return here at level 14, and it's just as empty as before. The entire thing is basically supported by a random encounter table, which really sucks. It's a way too long area. We start out by getting teleported to just a village in Barovia. I don't even think they ever mention which village it is, but there's whatever village is the one's right by Death House on the eastern side of the map. And you meet this kind of DMPC named Sarah Sunda, who instantly is kind of okay with the party. She's this badass, like, I don't know, interdimensional traveling superhero, inquisitor, and even like Strahd respects her. And her job is to get the rod out of the hands of the villains, and of course the party is also trying to get the rod, so their goals align. And you go into the house. There's a really weird bit where you're trying to like separate from. She's a really important NPC, the only important NPC here. Yeah, and then as soon as the characters enter the house, she suggests she and the party explore the house separately, which I guess is kind of horror movie-esque, but also just feels bizarre. Like, why would the party allow that? The house is super tiny anyway. And then you do these random encounters where, like, you meet her and she's already doing part of it. It's like she's activating half of the encounters without the party being there. I was so weirded out by how this whole thing is structured. It's first of all, it's just weird that we use the Death House, and second of all, it's very weird the way they use the Death House and use this NPC where it's all these certain encounters. There's scripted encounters with Sarah Sunda. Everything that happens is in this one little Death House encounter table, by the way, which is only like 4 different encounters. But throughout the entire thing, I'm going to scroll through kind of quickly, but you don't see a whole lot of like enemies or things in here, right? It's just a lot of empty rooms, and occasionally it'll say, hey, roll on the Death House encounter table, which, by the way, there was only like 4 things. Plus, you're supposed to be meeting Sarah Sunda because she's separated for some reason. You like see her fighting people or she's doing something cool. Like, why? Why are we taking all that away from the players? It's just so strange. And then we finally get to the end of all this, the actual content where there's like monsters and stuff to do, which is the basement. There's a few traps and things. There's some shambling mounds. The ritual is being completed by a bunch of cult fanatics, and they create this kind of boss battle with this relentless impaler out of the rod. The rod is usually in the hands of some kind of boss creature, which I'm fine with. And then it gets even weirder. Strahd himself shows up, which I think is a little bizarre, in the Death House. And then he like activates this kind of haunted, I don't know, like psychic zone thing that the party has to go. Since when did Strahd kneel before him? Since when did Strahd become like Professor Xavier, by the way? Because that's basically what happens here, is he like transports all the characters to these like psychic visions of hauntings where they do these different like events that are kind of creepy, but they're supposed to be puzzly in nature, and they're solving some kind of problem, and there's crying children, and there's a dining table, and creepy things are happening. That's like the whole event that happens. They go through all of these things as they step through like various doors of the house, I guess on their way back out. And then there's a meeting with Strahd right at the entrance of the house. But then the big like thing is supposed to be, oh, did you befriend Sarah Sunda? And then if so, then he lets you and her leave. But if not, if she's like, I don't care about these people, and you didn't do a good job of, Sarah Sunda will remember that kind of a thing, then you have to fight Strahd, which is supposed to be a big penalty. But at level 14, I think the characters can take Strahd. Like, Strahd is, he's got a decent stat block here, a CR 15 with some vampire spawn, but still, there wasn't a whole lot of fighting in the house. Like, I don't know. It just felt really, really strange to me. The whole thing just felt really off, poorly done. I hate the fact that we just revisit an exact carbon copy location that we did in the actual campaign. There's another area, by the way, that also does clearly wanted to model their dungeon crawl after a very famous dungeon. but does it way better and doesn't try to copy the literal dungeon, which I was super impressed by. This one, I was not, because it just tries to do the same thing, and the way it's structured, again, with that Surasunda NPC, and she's splitting off, and there's no real scripted encounters here. It's just bizarre, and that's the whole thing. So that is by far the weakest one. Very disappointing, because Ravenloft feels like it should be like a knockout, you know, for creating a self-contained, cool, like horror murder thing happening if you want to do Ravenloft. And Curse of Strahd is considered the best of all of the published D&D 5e campaign books. And you're telling me that one is the worst chapter in Eve of Ruin? Yes, that's what I'm telling you. Number 6 on my list is, this one breaks my freaking heart. Chapter 6, The Night of Blue Fire. This is the Dragonlance chapter, but you wouldn't fucking know that unless you were told, hey, you're in Kryn now, because there's very, very little in this chapter that really speaks to, and there's so many things you could do for Kryn, like where are the Draconians, where is the War of the Lance that we're doing, or the Dragon Armies, or something here. But no, we get a tale about werewolves fighting back against like a stronghold of undead. Okay, the undead work for Lord Soth, fine. That's a single name drop. There's a moon thing going on here, which is fine. Also, the Kryn and the Three Moons, probably the only thing that really makes it sound like it's from Kryn. But what I at least appreciate more than the Death House Ravenloft adventures, this one at least has multiple stages and does a good job of ingratiating you with the multiple NPCs, and especially the NPC that accompanies you for a good while. You first teleport to this gigantic tree, which is a cool picture involved too. And the rod is pointing you to this tree, but actually the rod has been recently taken, and instead the tree is home to this evil treant, an evil dryad, and a Kender werewolf who is trying to steal a piece of fruit so that he can give it to a large monster who is currently terrorizing his people, who are holed up in a cave somewhere. So you save him, you go and use the fruit to defeat this creature, which is a ridiculously strong creature, by the way, but it's funny that you have to go through all these actions and motions to like trying to get this creature away. But we're like, wait a minute, can't you just fight it? CR 15, we're level 15 by now. Like, clearly we could just fight this thing, right? Like, but whatever, we could use the fruit too. Okay. You free the werewolves known as the Blue Fire Wardens. They're good werewolves. I have read a lot of Dragonlance books. Granted, it's been a while since I read them. I don't recall werewolves or lycanthropy ever being a thing that I can think of in the Dragonlance. I'm sure I missed one or two in there somewhere. Maybe there was something about the blue fire. I don't know. I don't recall. It's not. It doesn't speak to me as much as other elements of Dragonlance would speak to me, like the fucking Draconians. So I didn't get any of that from here. But at least there's multiple stages involved. There are some fun NPCs involved, and you get a quest, which aligns again because all your quests are to go find the thing. So you've already got the buy-in, like, oh yeah, we need to get our rod piece was also taken to this Three Moons Vault, which is a gigantic, cool, undead-filled enemy stronghold, ruined site turned stronghold with these 3 towers. It's got this huge multi-level thing, which is hard to do in Roll20, but I appreciate, or virtual tabletop in general, but I appreciate kind of what they've done here with trying to keep it on the same map layer, by the way, and have like arrows pointing to them. You actually infiltrate it from below. Here's kind of an overland view right here, which is also very useful. Riffle is the name of the Kender werewolf NPC who gets to accompany you, which is very nice. And you're trying to rescue their leader, Valander here, and then there are multiple paths within this chamber, like at least 3 different ways you can use to get up, maybe 4, to get up into the stronghold itself, and then end up in all 3 towers. And you end up with this kind of interesting, almost video game-esque puzzle where it's like, hey, in order to get up and disrupt the ritual to the boss, you have to figure out the puzzle of the moons and get these mirrors that can overlap each other and basically end up going to all the different towers, which I really appreciated. It's a very classic like video game Zelda dungeon design where like it's open, but the boss is kind of sealed off and you have to do a thing to, you know, that makes you go around to different areas to unlock the boss. Honestly, if this were like, the biggest problem I have with this one is the Dragonlance setting, is just the theme is completely wasted here. But otherwise, I actually like the way this is set up. I was gonna say I think two of them I have a lot of problems with. I guess this one I did have a lot of problem with because I love the Dragonlance setting, and I was so crushingly disappointed by how this one I think fails to use the setting in a meaningful way. It doesn't really feel like Kryn at all. There's a little bit of puzzle to do with the moonlight, fine, but I thought it was disappointing in that regard. But the actual dungeon design, I think, is very, very solid. It's meaty. It's got a lot of undead and creatures going on, none of which are really, again, native to Kryn, although I'm not sure Kryn has too many except for the goddamn Draconians. But there's a cool boss fight with the mage on top with the ritual. So it's got 4 different battle maps to it, even though it's the Dice and Logos map art, which again, you can see my review for my comments on that, which I won't be making here. And then a dragon shows up because at least we get a dragon at some point. So it still ranks at number 6 because I have that big a problem where it doesn't fit the theme very well. But as a dungeon crawl, I think it's fine. And in fact, it's got multiple dungeons and multiple NPCs. So at least that's a little bit better. So maybe I would elevate this to the... No, I can't say it's fine because it's disappointing for the Dragonlance part of it. So that part sucks. That's number 6. Number 5. Now we're getting into the ones that are officially like fine. I have some problems, but I don't have huge glaring criticisms like I do the bottom 2. So number 5 is Chapter 2, which Chapter 2 includes the entire like meeting with the wizards at Sigil and getting the whole quest and all that, but it also includes the very first rod piece, which is the Underdark. You're going into an agent like safe house of Lolth cultists, mostly drow, in the Underdark, and you've got to find the rod there. This is the Forgotten Realms one, basically. So they actually did include like the main setting as one of the chapters. And as far as like representing the Forgotten Realms, a Lolth drow dungeon in the Underdark is probably pretty damn thematic. So I don't really have any problems with that. I think my only really problem here is it is kind of, I don't know, traditional in a way. I mean, there's cool stuff about it. Like there's a ritual you can disrupt where they're summoning a demon. That's kind of fun. There's a whole bunch of agents sitting at a table, which I believe has its own cool art, if we can find it. CW7. Yep, there it is. The Lolth cultists planning their thing, which is always fun. Aranus and the cultists there. There's a bunch of giant lizards, which you can kind of command using a meat stick and actually feed them to the spider dragon. Later on, by the way, there's a goddamn spider dragon, which is so cool and has one of my favorite pieces of art in this entire adventure as a boss fight. How cool is that? I showed it during the Roll20 review, and I'm showing it again here. There's a Cyclops named Gertrude that you can free from the prison, and she will join your forces because she's been captured. And it's kind of set up where, almost like a heist, where you get in and you're kind of sneaking around. They don't really know you're here. This place is so like well guarded and well secreted that they don't really expect. It's just not like actively guarded. It's like a secret safe house in the Underdark, but the rod, you can teleport to all of these places, and the rod tells you where you need to go. And of course, it's by the spider dragon. It's a little short, but also it's the lowest level of the bunch. You're level 11 for this one, so I think it's fine, right? It doesn't scream to me as being super memorable, but for it capturing the theme of the Underdark and the Forgotten Realms, I think it does a fine job. I think it's got a really cool boss fight. That's probably gonna be the most memorable part of the whole thing. So yeah, I don't really have any big problems with it, but also it's just not as exciting as some of the others. So that is that's Chapter 2, which is my number 5 on my top 7 list. Number 4 on my list, I actually really went back and forth on whether to put this one above or below the Underdark one, but it's Chapter 8. We go all the way up to, from the lowest level to the highest level one. I believe this is level 17, which is the Avernus chapter and the Red Belvedere. But I think this is the Casino in Hell, which is such an awesome idea. I wish it did more, because you picture Casino in Hell and you're like, oh man, you know what did a really cool exotic casino, although I probably also had complaints that maybe it could have been better, is the Casino in Planescape that I totally forgot now, but the one that's included in the Planescape 5e adventure. That one has a lot of fun, cool stuff and exotic creatures and just felt like a more casino-y thing and has a proper map to it. This one, this is all by Francesca Beralda, I think, is the other artist who does some of this artwork. And this is fantastic artwork, but this is not one you can actually like kind of move around tokens with, for example. But you don't really need to do that for most of these. So the plot here, I guess I'm skipping things, by the way. I do appreciate that when you first teleport to Avernus, you don't teleport outside the casino. The rods are very inconsistent about this, by the way. Sometimes they take you right where you need to go, and other times they kind of sort of take you close, and then you have to get your way there. And I believe the adventure sort of hand waves that away as saying like, oh, well, this particular area, there's magic interference. This particular area, there's magic interference. Like some of the like, and Dragonlance one, I'm not even sure. Like Dragonlance, it takes you to like where the rod recently was. Like, why didn't it take you to Three Moons Vault? I don't know, but sometimes it gets you close, sometimes it doesn't. Don't complain. We've got a teleportation network, whatever. In this case, it teleports you quite a distance away, and you get to join up with a bunch of Erinys who are piloting a badass war machine. You get your Mad Max on as you go and attack this giant Gulstro demon who's got these Vrox and other things, and have this just awesome blood war, cool Avernus battle. This is probably the thing that actually elevated it above the last chapter to me, because it does at least checkmark all the cool Avernus stuff that you would picture from like Descent into Avernus with the whole war machine and the blood war, before we get to the casino part of it, which I still enjoy. But then there's less kind of demon stuff going on in the casino. I thought it would go a little bit further into that and be a little bit more darker or something. But instead, it's kind of, I mean, it's all high level. There's like pit lords who are watching over you. There's nightmares who are racing the track. But the main quest here, you meet this tiefling who kind of runs everything, and she's got the rod in the lower vault area. And so the main quest is just to basically win the favor of one of the pit masters in these casino rooms. And then by completing their quest, or by just bribing them or winning enough money at whatever games they're running, with only one of them, then you gain access to the Dragon's Pride area, and then access to where the actual offices are, and you can fight her and take it. If I were running this campaign, I would definitely require the players to do at least probably 3 of them, because this is like the content here is all of these casino rooms. The racetrack isn't even a racetrack, by the way. The quest here is to slip a potion of speed into one of the nightmares. So it's not even like you racing or betting on the horses or anything. It's like you completing this quest by a duplicitous Rakshasa, which is kind of fun. But again, you expected more from here, right? 2 of the halls are just games of, one of them's a game of skill, the other one's a game of chance with at the Abishais. The Colosseum is, of course, just a giant arena with a whole bunch of battles and the boss fight of an Abishai at the end of that one. And then the maze is a really bizarre, like just random encounter table of things that can happen to you, or you can bribe the vampire casino master with some soul coins. So it's fine, right? I think it ends up being fine because I was really excited about the idea of a casino in hell and what that could mean. Instead, I'm like, oh, it's actually just kind of a normal casino, but just kind of scaled high level. And I was disappointed that it's only just you only have to complete one of these casino rooms in order to advance into the Dragon's Pride room. This tiny little Dragon Pride area, by the way, I'm zoomed out a little bit, is actually what I more pictured everything would be, like a spa with some demon ladies in there and an ice devil running the bar. Like, it seems really fun and cool in here. This is what I expected the casino more to be, and let your players like wander around and linger and do other things instead of going to all these just separate casino rooms and separate events. And then the finale is just a boss fight. Like, I don't know, I expected, if anything, to not have a boss fight, it would have been the casino one, but instead against this ridiculously high-level, like, tiefling bard, a CR23. And there's a weird bit at the end where, like, Tiamat's room is, like, right next door. Like, this whole casino is, like, built on top of Tiamat's lair. And she just kind of hands over the rod when you tell her, like, yeah, we need this to stop Vecna. She's like, okay. It just feels bizarre to do that from a goddess who was, like, the main villain of one of the D&D 5e campaigns. A little disappointment right there. But to me, unlike chapter 11 where I was like, it's fine, or chapter 2 where I was like, this one's fine, I think this one, this is cool versus this is disappointing, kind of evens it out to me, and this one ends up becoming just kind of fine because of all of that. But I guess I do have a lot of criticisms, but still some praise. I do think that the idea of a casino in Avernus is a lot of fun, and I have no complaints about the getting here part of it, which is the whole like war machine fighting the demons and doing the blood war thing, which is very cool. That is my number 4, which is Chapter 8, The Red Belvedere. Going on to my top 3. These are the creme de la creme, my favorite chapters. I guess my favorite, certainly my favorite multiversal chapters of this campaign, and also was kind of tricky for me to rank them. And interestingly, my ranking changed as I went back and did my deep dive. But I think they were always my top 3, if that makes sense. I always had my favorites, but like individually putting them changed as I went through. So number 3 on my list is Chapter 3, The Lambent Zenith. This is the Spelljammer chapter. And this one, I think, lends itself probably the best of all of them to doing the anthology format that this sort of does, the self-contained stories, because the Spelljammer theme is to do these very short but memorable, cool, like set piece adventures and exciting moments. And I was actually impressed that this one is less dangerous and crazy than I was expecting, because you start off, you step through the portal, and you're just hurtling in space. You're falling, you're fighting these star anglers as you dive down towards this wreckage, which is this Spelljammer ship that has crashed into the corpse of a dead Chaos God into 3 different pieces. And you can actually decide to go into any of those pieces, and you can teleport magic kind of randomly jumps you around, or you can just kind of fly and jump around as you need to, but you will fight a bunch of, encounters along the way as you do that. But this one, more than all of them, is a big social encounter, which I was impressed by. Honestly, they're all basically dungeon crawls, except this one is the least dungeon crawly of them all. I guess the casino also is very not a dungeon crawl too, but whereas the casino is more doing a bunch of skill challenges, this one is more a lot of role playing and socializing with a ton of NPCs. There are like every single character here, except for these sailors, I guess, but there's a ton of characters that you can meet: Githyanki pirates, orcs. There's a Gith who is not a Gith. It is a death slot in disguise, and he's causing a lot of the problems here, causing the tiefling first mate to be super paranoid and lock himself up. The first mate knows all the information about where to get the shard. The shard is beyond the captain, who is a freaking Deva who is like got prosthetics, which is really cool. She's like repairing her wing and her feet and stuff due to the crash. So I like the fact that you're coming into this crash and you picture, oh man, a crashed ship, such a spooky area full of death and a good dungeon crawl. But actually it just recently happened, and all the people are still there and they're still in trouble. You need to help them. So instead it becomes this big social rescue thing. There's a treant who's like trying to keep this blink dog alive by using its branches to like ward off the Grell. There's the one person who found out about the death slot, I believe is a Coatl in disguise, named Sirit, who is thrown in the brig. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff happening the players have to unravel, while still being very much a dangerous adventure location, because they're in the middle of the astral sea with a bunch of like flying space sharks and shit all around. And then after all of that, there is still a boss fight at the end, although it's a very awkward transition from one art map style to another, as you fight this really nasty, what's it called, a Hurtlod? This like plesiosaurus looking dinosaur creature within the Chaos God's heart in order to actually get the shard that you need. I really like this adventure a lot. I think just for, if you were running any kind of Spelljammer adventure, this one is amazing. And you could easily put whatever MacGuffin you need, or just have it be like, hey, this is like a thing you find is this crashed ship among this, Chaos God's body, and you can explore and help all these people. So I think it's really awesome. Super thumbs up to Chapter 3, my number 3, the Lambent Zenith from Spelljammer. There's only 2 left. Can we guess which ones they are? Number 2 is Chapter 7, the Greyhawk chapter, which kind of surprised me when I went into it. I didn't know what to expect, really, with the very traditional, D&D setting of old, which has been barely used. I think Ghosts of Saltmarsh is technically Greyhawk in 5th edition. This one has you teleporting into a Kraken battle, which is hilarious. We're level 16 by the time this chapter occurs. You meet a bunch of archaeologists, and they are looking for a tomb that has a bunch of artifacts in it they want returned to them. And the tomb is very clearly based on the classic Tomb of Horrors, which I love. There's a map that I'm trying to bring up. The map. Nope, not that one. Oh, where is that map? Can I find the map that... There we go, Tomb Complex map. I love it. This is like... And this is very, very much what the party sees at the beginning of Tomb of Horrors, which, by the way, we did a playthrough of at least half of that. You can see it here on my channel playing Tomb of Horrors as it appears in, I believe it was Tales from the Yawning Portal. This is the entrance with like the false, entrances, and the real ones with the pit traps and the demon face and all that. This is the one I was referencing when I talked about the Death House, and how disappointed I was that we just used the Death House. This is not Tomb of Horrors, but to me, it is Tomb of Horrors 2.0. I think this is better than Tomb of Horrors. I think it is a cool modernization of Tomb of Horrors. It keeps all the best parts, of a classic Gygaxian death trap dungeon with secret doors and like adventure game style puzzles with like multiple liquid, things that all do different things to you, or cryptic clues, or just dark archways that all teleport you to various areas of the dungeon. It's just, I mean, there's the rolling juggernauts, which appear in Tomb of the Nine Gods. There's acid pits. There's sentient statues which come to life, but you can actually convince them that not to kill you because they were kind of taken from the initial island's guardianship. There's illusory giant sharks. There's a really cool bridge puzzle that involves kind of knowing the pieces of or knowing the arcane symbols. Where is that? I want to say it's the Vortex Bridge puzzle map right here, which you don't want to fall into the Vortex Bridge. I love the acid pit one too. You cross this small, tiny ass bridge. Where's the acid pit? Right here. And then as soon as you step onto it, like air bursts from both sides of the wall and threatens to knock you off of the DC 20 deck save. There's so much good stuff happening in here, but none of it feels super bullshit or unfair or trying to immediately kill you, which I really do appreciate. And also, the party is level 16 by the time they make it in here, so they're much more capable and able to survive. But this is a very classic Death Trap dungeon. It's so good that I would recommend this as a dungeon crawl to anybody who wants to run a Death Trap dungeon that doesn't want to have the hilarious just cruelty of the Tomb of Horrors, and who doesn't want to run the giant like 8-level long or whatever it is Tomb of the Nine Gods, which also we did run a Tomb of Annihilation campaign, which is still a great dungeon. But to me, this is it's still only like 20 some rooms, which is also impressive. It's only the one floor like Tomb of Horrors. Take it back, it's 27. And I haven't even gotten to the best part yet. There's so many good things in here. The best part is that when you get to the end and you meet Rarak, which is discount Acerak, it's actually a simulacrum of Acerak, and he like doesn't like his job. You get there and he's super bummed about being a copy of Acerak. He doesn't want to do this job anymore. And you can basically shake him of his loyalty to Acerak and even encourage him to leave. He shuts down the tomb. He gets rid of the souls he's capturing, and he gets to join the archaeologists and become like a functioning member of society. I love this twist ending. You can literally convince it's very Fallout for me, by the way. Early Fallout is like you can convince the boss to just stand down, stop being a dick, and just, we're all cool here. Just hand over the shard and you can go join the archaeologists, give them all the treasures that are theirs to begin with, and you can live a nice, fulfilling life as a Lich copy. Like, that is an amazing twist ending, which is completely optional of a DM. If you think, Eric, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of course I want him to fight a Lich at the end, then you can totally do that. He's got a legit stat block. You can see he's got 200 hit points. He's the real deal CR21. Like, totally do that if you want. But I love that twist at the end. That really sells it for me. I was already loving this Death Trap dungeon. I cannot say enough good things about how this works. Ultimately, my number 2 on my list of my favorite chapters, which leaves us only one. It should not be a mystery by now because there's only one left. And that is, and I'm surprised also this was my favorite one, is chapter 4, the Eberron chapter, which is in Mount Ironrot, located in the Mournlands. This one has so many cool parts to it. I don't know Eberron very well at all, besides doing a few reviews of adventures here and there. And if you recall, the Eberron book from 5e did not have a campaign associated with it. It had only like a level 1 adventure with it. However, so this is really one of my first, I guess, adventures that I've looked at, and it is awesome. Like, it takes place at almost ground zero in the Mournlands, which again is where this huge, devastating, like magical bomb went off that really stopped this whole war. So it's super thematic and tied into Eberron's history and themes. It's got Warforged like crazy. The party has to locate a certain device because this area is really fucking with their ability to find the next rod. And the device is wonderfully kind of caught between two different factions, which is, I think it's under Mount Ironrot encounters. There's the Warforged Pilgrims, where they're trying to locate all these, they're called docents, I think, which are like little sentient metal spheres. And they're trying to keep them safe in this kind of ruined town of Yalos. And there's also these Siren veterans who are veterans of the war, and they are kind of racist against the Warforged and believe that they're just trying to sell their goods and survive and everything, and they just need the money. And then there's technically a third faction, which is the Blade Scouting Party, which is the Lord of Blades is sending out evil Warforged basically to hunt anybody down, and especially hunt the party down and become this cool like. It reminds me of like Indiana Jones and like the Nazis. Like it's already like an evil, or it's already a dangerous location. There's other like evil faction who happens to be there, also like antagonistically against whatever you're trying to do. So you have to deal with this whole faction threat first. Get the Docent, which is again very thematic to the Warforged. There's also even a battle map provided if in case you have to fight the Warforged there or have this big showdown with the two factions, which I appreciate. And then all those things point you to Landro, which is this amazing, gigantic Warforged Colossus dungeon, which is stuck inside of a mountain, which is so freaking cool and looks cool on the battle map. You can see here on the right side, there's like the shoulders and arms. I need to lower this thing. Chest, and then legs and feet. There's the kind of cutaway. And then there are mountain passages. You can actually get inside this Warforged through 3 different passages. Obviously, the one on the ground level probably being the one that makes the most sense. And there's like anti-gravity. Like the whole thing is set up like a space station where you can just kind of float your way up through the entire body to reach different levels. There's monsters. There's ghosts. There's the Warforged party that still tries to fight you, and you can actually trigger them to fight you at different points throughout the entire dungeon crawl, depending on how you want to pace it as the DM. And then once you get to the end, you can meet like this sentient like entity version of Landro who talks to you and wants to like even take some of your secrets, but does that by giving you like inspiration. Or you can acquire him as like a little buddy. You put him in a gem and he turns into like an elemental gem. In any case, there's no real boss fight at the end. Instead, it's like a dialogue session, but you can, treat the giant Warforged party here. I mean, Glaive's got 187 hit points. That's basically your boss fight. And then it does a fucking Super Metroid thing where the entire thing is a shutdown sequence. 1 minute till self-destruct. You got to race back through at least this upper chunk and get out of the cave because the whole thing is going to explode, dealing 18d10 fire damage on a DC 18, and everything is just destroyed as this thing explodes. What an amazing ending. It does all the cool things that I want an adventure to do, and it showcases Eberron in such a cool way to where I and all my players would be like, holy shit, this area is so cool. And to me, that's what makes this one definitely the number one with a bullet. My favorite region from Eve of Ruin is the Eberron chapter, which again, I did not expect that going into Eve of Ruin, nor even going into this video did I necessarily expect that. Only when I really took a deep dive at everything and read I read all of these chapters front to back, did I say, okay, this one by far I have just 0 complaints about and does everything perfectly well. So that is my highly opinionated ranking of all of the adventures of the chapters of Eve of Ruin. Just real quick, number 7, the Death House chapter 5 with Ravenloft. Let's see, open up the Kaz's Plan one again. Number 6 was the Dragonlance chapter 6 with the Three Moons Vault. Number 5 was the chapter 2 Forgotten Realms Underdark chapter, the Web's Edge dungeon. Number 4 was chapter 8, the Red Belvedere, the Avernus Casino. Number 3 was the chapter 3, the Lambent Zenith in the Astral Sea for Spelljammer. Number 2 was chapter 7, Greyhawk, Isle of Serpents, or Tomb of Wayward Souls. And then number 1, with a bullet, was the Eberron chapter 4 at Mount Ironrot at the Morn Lands. And that is going to be this video. Thank you to everyone for watching. You can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel, and you can support my work at patreon.com/Rogue Watson. Shouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Thomas, Stan, Brennan, Zensider, Eclectic, Roleplayer, Christopher, Corey, Big Nut, John F, John L, Eric, Tyler, Nathan, Kitsley, Counselor, Andrew, Del, the Relder, and Captain Woody 79, Stephanie, Patrick, Jason, Ismail, Amit, Limpy Spuds, Sharny, David, William, Warden, Cutest Fox, Harold, and Sam. And gold patrons RPG Papercraft, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Does Allow, Sam, Jerome, Nathan, Fast, Torres, Scott, Rufus, Karen, Jerry, Glenn, Marcus, and Mark. Thank you all very much for your support.